At my wedding rehearsal dinner, I overheard my mother whispering to my husband that she still believes I don't deserve him, and it broke me completely. I cheated on David 3 weeks before our wedding, and last night at our rehearsal dinner, I heard my mother tell him she still doesn't think I deserve him. She was right. I don't deserve him. I never did. But hearing those words from her lips while I stood behind the kitchen door with our wedding cake in my hands made something inside me shatter completely. It started with Jake from my yoga class. Just conversations after sessions, nothing more. He made me laugh in ways David hadn't in months. David was always so serious about the wedding planning, so focused on budgets and seating charts and whether we could afford the better flowers. Jake talked about books and travel and asked me questions about what I actually wanted from, not just what dress I'd chosen or what songs we'd play. The night it happened, David and I had fought about the honeymoon. He wanted to stay local to save money for the house down payment. I wanted to go somewhere we'd never been together, somewhere that felt like the start of something new instead of just an extension of our careful, planned existence. He called me unrealistic, I called him boring. We went to bed angry. Jake texted me that night, just a simple, "How are doing?" But it felt like he actually cared about the answer. David was already asleep, turned away from me in bed like he'd been doing for weeks. I texted back. Then we were talking on the phone in whispers. Then he was asking if I wanted to meet for coffee to talk through whatever was making me sound so sad. Coffee became his apartment. His apartment became me making the worst decision of my while telling it wasn't really cheating because we weren't married yet. Because David and I weren't connecting. Because I deserved to feel wanted and interesting and alive. Because Jake looked at me like I was someone worth knowing, not just someone whose wedding he had to pay for. The guilt started before I even left Jake's apartment. Not the kind of guilt that makes confess and beg forgiveness. The kind that makes realize I've become someone don't recognize. Someone who lies easily. Someone who can sit across from her fiancé at breakfast and ask about his day while tasting another man on her lips. I into wedding planning after that. Became the most enthusiastic bride anyone had ever seen. David noticed the change and attributed it to pre-wedding excitement. He started being sweeter again, more attentive. He surprised me with a weekend trip to the mountains, just because. He wrote me a letter about how excited he was to marry me and left it on my pillow. Reading that letter was like swallowing glass. He loved me completely, trusted me completely, and I had destroyed something beautiful for a few hours of feeling special. I considered telling him then, almost did, but I was a coward who convinced herself that confessing would only him unnecessarily, that some mistakes were better buried. Jake texted me a few times after. I never responded. Switched yoga studios. Avoided places where I might run into him. But the damage was done not just to my relationship with David, but to my relationship with. I had learned I was capable of betrayal. That knowledge poisoned everything. The wedding preparations continued. Dress fittings, her cake tastings, final guest counts. David's family welcomed me with open arms. His mother helped me pick out shoes. His sister me a bridal shower where she gave a speech about how lucky David was to have found someone who made him so happy. His dad pulled me aside at the rehearsal to tell me he'd never seen David smile as much as he had since we got engaged. But my own mother, my own flesh, and saw right through me. She'd been watching me differently for weeks, whether asking careful questions about whether I was sure I was ready for marriage, whether David and I had talked through everything important. I thought she was just being overprotective. I thought she was worried about normal pre-wedding jitters. Last night, at the rehearsal dinner, I went to get the cake from the kitchen to surprise David. His favorite chocolate cake from the bakery where we had our first date, made special just for tonight. I was feeling good for the first time in weeks. Surrounded by love, by family, by people celebrating our future together. I thought maybe I could put my mistake behind me. Maybe I could be the wife David deserved. That's when I heard my mother's voice through the kitchen door, low and serious. The way she talks when she's saying something she really means. I know she's my daughter, David, but I need to know something. I don't think she deserves. I've watched how treat her, how love her, and I've watched how she responds. There's something in her that isn't grateful for what she has. Something that's always looking somewhere else. My hand started shaking so hard I almost dropped the cake. David's voice, confused, "Mom Sarah, I don't understand." Did Sophie say something? She doesn't have to say anything. It's in her eyes, it's in the way she carries herself. Like she's settling for instead of choosing. Like she thinks she could do better if she really tried. That's not, we're getting married tomorrow. She said yes. People say yes for lots of reasons, sweetheart. Sometimes they say yes because it's easier than saying no. Sometimes they say yes because it's what's expected. I worry that love her more than she loves. I worry that she's going to break heart. I stood there in that kitchen, holding our cake, listening to my mother articulate every horrible truth about me that I'd been trying to hide from. She couldn't have known about Jake, but she knew about the part of me that made Jake possible. The part that was never quite satisfied, never quite grateful, always wondering if there was something better just around the corner. David defended me, of course he did. Told my mother that she was wrong. That I loved him completely, that we were happy together. His voice had that quality it gets when he's trying to convince himself of something as much as he's trying to convince someone else. I set the cake down on the counter and walked back to the dining room on numb legs. Smiled and laughed and accepted congratulations for the rest of the evening. Let David feed me bites of cake while everyone cheered. Pretended my mother's words hadn't confirmed every terrible thing I already knew about, but they had. And worse, I realized that my betrayal of David wasn't an isolated incident. It was evidence of exactly who I am. Someone who takes love for granted. Someone who wants what she doesn't have more than she values what she does. Someone who destroys beautiful things because she can't see their beauty until it's too late. I'm writing this at 3 a.m., 12 hours before I'm supposed to walk down the aisle to marry a man who deserves so much better than me. A man my own mother knows I don't deserve. She's right, she's absolutely right. And the worst part is, I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to put on that white dress and let him promise to love me forever, while I carry the taste of another man's lies in my mouth. I married him. God help me. I walked down that aisle in my white dress and married him while my mother watched with worry in her eyes and my guilt sat in my chest like a stone. The ceremony was beautiful. David cried when he saw me. I cried too, but not for the reasons everyone thought. Standing at that altar, looking into his face while he promised to love and honor me, I felt like the biggest who ever lived. When the officiant asked if anyone had any reason we shouldn't be married, I almost spoke, almost said, I do, and told everyone exactly why this was a mistake, but I didn't. I said I do when they asked if I took David to be my husband. I said it clearly and loudly while my mother sat in the front row with her lips pressed into a thin line. I said it while remembering Jake's hands on my skin. I said it while knowing I was condemning David to a marriage with someone who had already betrayed him and would probably do it again. The reception was perfect, everyone said so. The flowers, the music, the food, everything David and I had planned so carefully. Our first dance was to the song we'd chosen months ago, back when I still believed I was a good person capable of keeping promises. He held me close and whispered in my ear about how happy he was, how perfect everything was, how he couldn't wait to start our together as husband and wife. I smiled and whispered back that I loved him. It was true and it was a lie at the same time. I did love him. I also knew that my love was the selfish, destructive kind that takes without giving back, the kind that says, I love, while making choices that prove otherwise. 3 months into our marriage I started having panic. They'd hit me randomly in the grocery store, at work, while David and I were watching TV on the couch. My heart would race, my hands would shake, and I'd feel like I was drowning. David was incredible about it, held me through them, drove me to doctor appointments, researched therapists and support groups. The therapist, Dr. Martinez, was kind but persistent. She kept pushing me to explore what might be triggering the. I told her about work stress, about adjusting to married, about normal newlywed concerns. I never told her about Jake, never told her about my mother's words, never told her that I was having panic because I was living a lie and my body was rejecting it. David suggested we try couples therapy, just to make sure we're communicating well. He said, marriage is an adjustment for everyone. He was trying so hard to fix something he didn't even know was broken, trying to heal wounds he didn't know existed. In couples therapy, Dr. Chen asked us about our expectations for marriage, our goals, our dreams. Heard David talked about growing old together, about kids someday, about building a filled with small daily kindnesses and big shared adventures. He talked about feeling like the luckiest man alive, because he got awake next to me every morning. When she asked me the same questions, I panicked. Not a panic, but the kind of panic feel when someone asks to explain something don't understand. I mumbled something about happiness and partnership and making each other better people. David reached over and squeezed my hand, thinking I was just shy about sharing feelings in front of a stranger. But Dr. Chen kept looking at me with those perceptive therapist eyes, started asking more pointed questions. Sophie, do you feel like can be authentic self in this marriage? Do you ever feel like you're playing a role rather than just being who are? Is there anything about that are afraid David wouldn't love if he knew about it? That last question nearly broke me. I started crying in that office, crying that I couldn't explain or stop. David was so worried, so concerned, reaching for tissues and asking what was wrong. Dr. Chen just waited, letting me cry, knowing that sometimes tears are the only honest thing left. I told them I was just overwhelmed. Wedding stress catching with me, adjusting to being a wife, normal stuff. They believed me because they wanted to believe me. Because the alternative was too to consider. But the panic got worse, started happening every time David touched me intimately. Every time he looked at me with that expression of complete love and trust. My body was trying to tell me what my mind wouldn't admit. I was living a lie that was me from the inside out. I started working late to avoid going home. Started picking fights about small things to create distance. Started sleeping on my side of the bed like there was an invisible wall down the middle. David noticed all of it but interpreted it as me needing space to adjust. He gave me space while continuing to love me unconditionally. That's when I understood what my mother had seen. Not just that I didn't deserve him, but that I was incapable of receiving his love without contaminating it. Every kindness he showed me was tainted by my guilt. Every gesture of love was a reminder of my betrayal. I was turning his beautiful, pure feelings into something twisted and painful. 6 months after the wedding, Jake texted me again. Just a simple, saw wedding photos on Instagram, looked beautiful, hope we're happy. I stared at that message for an hour. Didn't respond but didn't delete it either. Kept it in my phone like evidence of my own moral bankruptcy. David found it 3 days later. Not because he was snooping, but because my phone was dead and he was using it to call his mom while it charged. The message was right there on my lock screen when it lit. "Who's Jake?" he asked when I got home from work. Simple question, casual tone. But I could hear something underneath it. The first in his absolute trust. I could have told the truth then. Could have said, he's someone I made a terrible mistake with right before our wedding. Could have finally been honest and dealt with the consequences. Instead, I lied again. Just someone from my old yoga class, I said. We were friends for a while but I haven't talked to him in months. David nodded and handed me my phone. He seems to think too we're pretty close if he's commenting on wedding photos. He's just being nice. Know how social media is. Another lie. Another brick in the wall I was building between us. David let it go, but something changed in his face. A little guardedness that hadn't been there before. I had planted the seed of doubt, and I watched it grow over the following weeks. He started paying attention to my phone in ways he never had before. Not checking it, but noticing when I got messages, watching my face when I read them. He started asking more questions about my day, about my coworkers, about where I'd been when I came home late. Not accusatory questions, just the questions of someone who was starting to realize he might not know his wife as well as he thought. The worst part was watching his confidence erode. David had always been sure of himself, sure of us, sure of his place in the world. But doubt is that spreads. I watched him start to question things he'd never questioned before. Whether he was interesting enough, good-looking enough, successful enough. Whether I was happy with him or just settling. He wasn't wrong to wonder, but watching him doubt himself because of my lies was. I was destroying the man I claimed to love, piece by piece, lie by lie. One night about 8 months after the wedding, he rolled over in bed and asked me directly, Sophie, are happy, really happy? Hurt because lately it feels like are somewhere else even when right here with me. I could have told him the truth then too. Could have said, no, I'm not happy, and it's not because of. It's because I'm a liar and a cheat and I don't know how to live with what I've done. But I was still a coward. Of course I'm happy, I said. Why would even ask that? I don't know, it just feels like something's changed. Like there's this distance between us that wasn't there before. We're imagining things. I love. He my forehead and said he loved me too, but I could feel his uncertainty. I had made him question reality itself. Made him doubt his own perceptions because I couldn't face mine. That was the night I realized I wasn't just destroying anymore. I was destroying him. Everything fell apart on a Tuesday morning in October, 10 months after our wedding. David was making coffee, humming the song from our first dance, and I was watching him move around our kitchen in his pajamas, thinking about how much I loved this version of him. Relaxed, happy, unconsciously domestic. This was what I was going to lose, and I was going to deserve every second of the loss. My phone buzzed with a text. Without thinking, I glanced at it while David was right there beside me. Jake again? Been thinking about. Would love to catch sometime. I must have made some sound, some intake of breath because David looked over. Looked at my face, then at my phone, then back at my face, and I watched 34 years of trusting people, of believing the best about everyone he loved in his eyes. Let me see it, he said quietly. I could have said no. Could have deleted the message and pretended nothing happened, but I was so tired of lying, so exhausted by the weight of carrying this secret, that I just handed him the phone. He read the message. Then he scrolled and read the previous one from 6 months ago. Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger yet, something worse. The look of someone realizing they've been living in a house built on sand. Ooh, is Jake, Sophie? And don't lie to me this time. The truth came out in pieces. Halting, pathetic pieces that made everything sound even worse than it was. I told him about the yoga class, about the conversations, about the night we fought before the wedding. I told him about Jake's apartment and what happened there and how I'd been carrying it like ever since. David listened without interrupting. Just stood there holding my phone, watching me destroy his world with words I should have spoken a year ago. When I finished, he set the phone down very carefully on the counter. His hands were shaking. Cheated on me 3 weeks before our wedding. Yes. And then married me anyway. Yes. And have been lying about it for 10 months. Yes. He nodded like he was processing information, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then he looked at me again and I saw something that made my stomach drop. Not just betrayal. Disgust. I need to leave, he said. David, please let me explain. Leave. Right now. Go stay with someone else. I can't look at right now. I packed a bag with shaking hands while he sat in the living room staring at the wall. When I came back downstairs, he was holding our wedding album. Looking at the picture of us, the cake. The one where we're both laughing at something his best man said. I was so happy, he said without looking. In this picture, I was the happiest I'd ever been in my. And he looked at me then, and his eyes were devastated. We're thinking about another man. No. David, that's not. Please don't lie to me anymore. I can't take any more lies. I went to my sister's house and told her everything. She listened with horror growing on her face, then asked the question I'd been dreading, Sophie, what the is wrong with? I didn't have an answer. Still don't. What do you say when someone asks why I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to? When they ask why away a man who loved completely for a few hours with someone who didn't matter. David filed for divorce 3 weeks later. No counseling, no attempt to work through it. Just papers served by a lawyer with a note that said, I can't be married to someone who can lie to my face for 10 months. I hope find whatever it is you're really looking for. The hardest part was telling people. My mother just nodded when I called her, like she'd been expecting this call since the rehearsal dinner. I'm sorry, sweetheart, she said, but I'm not surprised. His family was different. His mother cried on the phone when he told her. Actually cried. His sister sent me a text that just said, how could, his father, the man who'd told me at the rehearsal that he'd never seen David so happy, didn't contact me at all. I became a cautionary tale, the woman who cheated on her fiancé right before the wedding and then lied about it for almost a year. People I barely knew had opinions about my moral character. Coworkers whispered when I walked by. Friends chose sides, and most of them chose David. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. David kept the house we'd bought together, the furniture we'd picked out, that we'd built. I got my clothes and my guilt and the knowledge that I destroyed something beautiful because I couldn't appreciate what I had. I ran into Jake at a coffee shop last month. He smiled and waved like we were old friends who'd lost touch. Sophie, how's married treating? I'm divorced, I said. His face changed. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's fine, it was my fault. He looked uncomfortable, probably wondering if he was somehow connected to my failed marriage. He was, but not in the way he might have thought. He wasn't the problem, I was. I would have found someone else if it hadn't been him. Would have sabotaged my marriage in some other way if I hadn't cheated. Because that's who I am, someone who destroys good things because I don't believe I deserve them. David's doing well, from what I hear. He started dating someone new about 6 months ago. My friend Jessica, who stayed neutral through the divorce, showed me their pictures together. He looks happy. Actually happy, not the careful happiness he had with me toward the end. This woman looks at him the way I should have looked at him. Like he's exactly what she wants, not something she's settling for. I'm alone now. Really alone. Not just unmarried but isolated by my own choices. Potential partners find out about what happened and lose interest quickly. Friends drift away because spending time with me reminds them that people they trust can betray them completely. My family loves me but struggles to understand how I could have made such spectacularly bad decisions. Some nights I lie awake thinking about alternate versions of my story. The version where I told David about Jake the morning after it happened. The version where I called off the wedding rather than starting our marriage with a lie. The version where I was brave enough to face the consequences of my choices instead of compounding them with more bad choices. But those are fantasies. This is reality. I am a person who had everything and it away for nothing. I am a person who can't be trusted with love because I don't know how to value it until it's gone. I am a person who makes selfish choices and then has to live with them forever. My mother was right at that rehearsal dinner. I didn't deserve David. But the tragedy isn't that I married him anyway. The tragedy is that I could have become someone who deserved him if I'd been honest about who I was instead of pretending to be someone better. Now I know exactly who I am, the woman who cheated on the man who loved her most, lied about it at the altar, and spent 10 months watching him slowly realize that his wife was a stranger. I'm the woman who chose temporary excitement over permanent happiness and got exactly what I deserved in return. I'm writing this as a warning to anyone who thinks they can have both. Can't. When cheat, don't just betray partner. Become someone who is capable of betrayal, and that knowledge changes everything about how move through the world. Become someone who can't trust, which means no one else should trust either. David deserved a wife who would choose him every day, her even when it was boring, even when it was hard, even when someone more exciting was standing right in front of her offering something that looked like freedom, but was actually just destruction wearing a prettier face. I chose 3 hours with Jake over 30 years with David, and now I get to live forever with the math of that decision.